for some questions. So with that, Jim.
Oh. Yeah, my question would be for both gentlemen. I retired a couple years ago, and I depend on my Social Security a great deal for my spendable income. Everybody wants to monkey with that. I've paid into it all my life. And I wonder if you gentlemen could tell me how you're going to protect that and how you're going to protect my interest, because I'm pretty dependent on that as part of my basic income. I have a small retirement and I have some money that I've saved. But I was promised a long time ago that if I paid into it, it would always be there for me.
It needs to be monkeyed with, but not at your expense. What we need to do, first of all, the federal government needs to keep their hands out of it, using it as a little cash box to go on other spending sprees until they can get appropriations to pay for those, and which always means higher taxes. The problem is there's not necessarily a government constitutional authority for Social Security. When it was passed, I mean, there was really no constitutional authority for that. But once it was once it was put into law, yes, they owe you. They owe you that, and they owe you the protection to make sure that you get that money. But we can't do it indefinitely. We, as the people, we can't continue to do that indefinitely. But it could be done at the state level. What I would say to you, sir, is that it absolutely has to be protected. But we need to look at other things to make it work to some degree in the future. And I would say to place at some point, let's say at a 20-year point, to get us off of the entire program once those who have paid into it have received the money back that they were guaranteed. And new people that get involved could participate in such things as privatization of Social Security. There have been several other proposals, but to your question, to your specific question, you have got to make sure that you get the money back that you put in there, if you ever will. We don't know, but it has to be protected. That's your money. It's just like any other money that you send to Washington D.C. And when they start robbing that little piggy bank to go spend on these other things, that's sort of dipping into it. And then you'll end up someday with people in your situation who are on Social Security getting an IOU. What good's that? So we absolutely must make sure that we cut the rest of the government things that we don't need to protect that. And then we need to get rid of that program eventually. The states we could have a Social Security system of sorts at each state level. At each state level, not the federal government. I mean, the federal government, again, Article 1, Section 8, U.S. Constitution tells everything that Congress is supposed to do, and doesn't say anything about paying retirement. I get a retirement that I earn, and I would hope that they would never quit paying my retirement, but it has been monkeyed with in many different regards. I have health care through my retirement, but I've lost a lot of benefits from that health care. I don't often use them, but yeah, I was promised that. It was among the reasons why I made a 20-year career out of it. At least I was hoping that I would get that at the end of it, because you don't make a whole lot of money while you're in the military. Those in here that were in the military understand that. But I don't think it could be fixed immediately. I think we have to look long range into it, and I think we have to set a date.
Well, the federal government has a responsibility and an obligation to meet their commitments to Social Security retirees and future retirees. And you might not have seen it yet, but I believe today Zach Space went up on Columbus TV, Network TV, blasting me that I'm going to cut Social Security benefits, raise the retirement age, and do all these things. And I've never said I was going to do that. Matter of fact, I said the opposite. We're going to meet our obligations. We're not going to raise the payroll taxes to fund it. We're not going to cut benefits, and we're not going to raise retirement age. And the way we fix this problem, this goes back to the deficit spending again. This year, you know, they were talking about so many years out that Social Security would be in the red and going broke. It was going broke, but being actually a negative cash flow. Well, guess what? This year it's a negative cash flow because they trash the economy so bad now with their deficit spending. You got more people laid off, not working, and not paying into the system. So it's in the red now. And I thought it was interesting. I saw a report here recently where we had from the year prior we had a 50% increase in 62-year-olds retiring, and it's not because a lot of those 62-year-olds wanted to retire yet. It's because they were forced to retire because they lost their job, and it's pretty hard to get a job if you're 62 years old, and so or close to it. So they had to go and retire and go into Social Security to make ends meet, and so that just adds to the problem of the negative cash flow, and that goes back to this economy and what they've done with their massive deficit spending and burdensome regulations and just tanking this economy and put people out of work. So it goes back to getting people back to work, getting this economy going, getting people back to work, and that will help make Social Security stronger. And that's what we need to address it now and work towards that. And so when you see those attack ads on TV here in the next week, 2 weeks, I wouldn't trust Zach Space on anything because he's come out here and tells you he's not going to vote for cap and trade, goes back and votes for cap and trade, flip-flops on a lot of things, voted for massive tax increases, voted for massive spending, voted for all the stimulus and the bailouts, and he says he's going to protect Social Security. How do you protect Social Security when you tank the economy? You can't. We got to get people back to work, get this economy going, and that brings in the dollars to fund what you paid in and ensure your financial security in your retirement.
Okay, if the audience has any more questions, you're welcome to fill out the index card. And hey, Lois?
Yes.
I was just asking anybody if they wanted to fill out an index card.
Got another, okay.
While we're doing that, I'll go to one of these questions here. Again, it's called the Abigail Adams Project. It's a questionnaire. It's 26 simple questions. And for instance, I'll go to number 8. Drilling for oil in America-controlled lands and waters. Again, that's drilling for oil in America-controlled lands and waters. And we'll let each candidate respond to that.
Well, Dan, I assume you're asking for 4 or against it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to develop our natural resources and let the private sector go at it. We can do it responsible. Obviously there was a tragedy in the Gulf this past summer, or spring all summer, and that's terrible that happened. And I think something broke down there, obviously. But we've got a whole new Marshall Shale formation in Pennsylvania and in Ohio, and I guess there's more of it out in the Dakotas and Wyoming. And we've got a natural gas supply in this country we're the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. And the reason we got that now, because the technology has got to a place where we can directional drill and hydrofrack to release that gas from that shale. And we need to be doing that. So we need an energy, we need a broad portfolio of energy, and that's how we get dependent on energy, our supplies. But we need to have a reliable and affordable energy supply to fuel a strong, growing economy. And Zach Space voted for cap and trade. That's going the wrong way. That artificially raises the price of energy. It puts our fossil fuel producers under the bus, and it kills jobs. And we just got to get away from that. I would never support that carbon tax or cap and trade. It's just terrible. So I'm for drilling. I think we shouldn't have had the moratorium on the drilling after the BP incident. It's like airplane crashes. You don't just stop all flights for 6 months. So that's how I feel about it. And I'm a big proponent of some other things. Biodigestion. Biodigestion, we've got a plant, experimental plant at the Research Center in Worcester. They just opened Quasar Energy, just opened a plant in Zanesville. I think they're building one in Columbus. But what I really like about biodigestion as an example, it solves 2 problems. It produces energy, but it also helps the environment because they're taking, as an example, waste. Some of the waste is from municipal sewage treatment plants, and they can digest that and create methane, which is natural gas, and generate electricity, or they can clean it up enough to put in the natural gas pipelines. So there's a lot of things we can be doing, but not trying to get the energy cost up to a certain level to maybe artificially stimulate other areas that economically don't work. I'm for research and development, the private sector, and develop new technologies, fuel cells, better batteries, but we've got to be able to generate electricity affordably, and that's going to be our main energy source. And develop our natural resources. I'm for drilling in Anwar, I'm for drilling offshore, and because we can do it responsibly and with common sense regulations.
Yeah, the senator said something happened out in the Gulf and whatever. I can tell you what happened out in the Gulf. Because our Congress decided there were certain areas that had long been determined we were allowed to drill in that were closer inshore. Well, the oil companies had to go out and drill down 1.5 miles or whatever that is. And that's dangerous. We just found that out this summer, that that's dangerous. Now I suppose they know how to cap a well. I mean, look how long it took them, and so maybe they could be able to do that again. But if they were at, the close shore drilling rigs, there's never really been a problem with that, except the environmentalists don't want it. That's what the problem is as far as that's concerned, as far as why that oil spill happened out there. To me, if you were to drill, for example, in Anwar up in Alaska, we know from what the oil companies have been able to do that we can actually go into an area that's a pristine type area and leave a very small footprint there, and even clean it up when they're done to extract that oil. We're based on oil, let's face it. My car runs on oil. I don't know anybody here's got a sun-powered car or wind-up car, or I have stopped at a gas station on my way home tonight. And that price needs to be reasonable. It needs to be back down. And if we were producing our own oil, that price wouldn't necessarily come back down. Now, as far as these other biofuels, corn fuels, and all these things, I haven't done a lot of research, and I'm not like an expert in the field, but some of the reading that I've done on that is that it costs more in fossil petroleum to produce some of these products than the amount of product that you can produce by going through the process. Anybody seen any of the, there's been documentaries on that. Yeah. But yeah, we need to look at all sorts of different types of energy, solar, et cetera, but this country's not ready to depend on that. I mean, I just can't envision going home tomorrow and slapping solar panels on my roof or plugging into some windmill or something. It's going to take a while for that to happen. But what we need to do, and the question that Abigail Adams thing was referring to, we need to get off dependence on foreign oil. We're going to have, we're going to be dependent on oil. I know, in the Air Force, I don't know of any jets that don't run on jet fuel. We need to do it. We need to have our own. We need to have capacity to have our own. We need to start lifting these ridiculous regulations from restricting where we can and can't, when we've got China drilling off our coasts. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me.